For a long time, Dandy's world felt almost impossible to escape. Every week, players were uncovering hidden details, discussing their favorite tunes, sharing theories about the game's lore, and trying to predict what the developers might do next. It had become one of those rare Roblox experiences that managed to build a community far beyond the game itself. But over the last several weeks, something changed. If you've spent any amount of time in the Dandy's world recently, you've probably noticed it too. The conversations feel different. The excitement is still there for some players, but it's no longer the only thing people are talking. In fact, depending on where you look, the game itself isn't even the main topic. Instead, people have been asking questions that, at least for now, still don't have clear answers. Ever since discussions surrounding the game's creator began spreading across social media, Discord servers, and Roblox community, the atmosphere around Dandy's world has shifted in a way that few people could have predicted. What started as a few conversations quickly grew into something much larger, eventually becoming impossible to ignore. Before long, nearly every corner of the community was talking about the same thing. YouTube videos were covering, livestream chats were debating, comment section filled up with opinions, theories, and speculation. Even posts that had nothing to do with the situation eventually found themselves flooded with the exact same question from players: what happens next? And that's really the question that has been hanging over Dandy's world ever since all of this began. Normally, when a game experiences a moment like this, players expect some kind of response. Not because everyone will suddenly agree afterward, but because people naturally want clarity. They want to understand what's happening, where things stand, and what the future might look like. But as the days passed, that clarity never arrived. Instead, the silence became its own topic of discussion. Some players viewed that silence as understandable. They argued that responding publicly to a situation like this is always simple, and that rushing statements sometimes create even more. Others disagreed completely, believing that the longer the community waited, the more uncertainty would continue to grow, and uncertainty has a way of changing community. Not too long ago, the biggest debates in Dandy's world involved hidden lore, secret interactions, or theories about upcoming content. Today, many players are having entirely different conversations. Some have stepped away temporarily. Others are logging in every day as if nothing. What's fascinating is that neither group is necessarily wrong. That's what makes this moment feel so unusual. Two people can be longtime fans and have completely different reactions to everything that's happened. One player might believe that Dandy's world should be judged solely on the experience it provides. Another might feel that the events outside the game are equally important. And somewhere in the middle are thousands of players who simply don't know what to think anymore. Then, just as discussions surrounding the situation seem to be reaching their peak, something unexpected happened. New content appeared. Almost overnight, timelines, Discord servers. Some immediately jumped into the game every themselves. Others barely acknowledged the content at all, choosing instead to focus on the timing of its release. Suddenly, now, people weren't just debating the controversy, they were debating what this meant. For some members of the community, the arrival of new content was a positive sign. To them, it suggested that development was continuing and that the people behind Dandy's world were still committed to supporting the game despite everything happening around it. For others, however, it raised even more questions. Had this always been planned? Was it delayed and finally released now? Or was there another reason behind? At the moment, nobody outside the development team can answer those questions with complete certainty. And when answers don't exist, theories tend to fill the space. That's exactly what's happened. If you spend enough time reading community discussion, you'll quickly notice that everyone seems to have a different explanation. Some believe people are reading situation. Others are convinced that every decision being made right now carries additional meaning. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. What can't be denied, though, is how dramatically the atmosphere surrounding Dandy's world has changed in such a short period. Just a month ago, an announcement would have been met almost entirely with excitement. Today, it sparks debate, and perhaps that's the clearest indication of all that this community is currently experiencing one of the most significant turning points in its history. Because regardless of where people stand, one thing has become impossible to ignore. Dandy's world isn't being viewed the same way it was before. And until players get a better understanding of what comes next, that probably going to anytime. What's especially interesting about this situation is that there doesn't seem to be a single opinion that represents the entire community anymore. For years, Dandy's world felt united by a shared sense of excitement. Whether players were searching for hidden detail, discussing their favorite character, or waiting for the next piece of content, there was usually a feeling that everyone was experiencing the journey together. That feeling hasn't completely disappeared, but it has changed. Today, if you ask 10 different players how they feel about Dandy's world, you might receive 10 completely different answers. Some will tell you they're still having just as much fun as they always, and then there are the waiting to see how everything unfolds before deciding where they stand. It's a situation that doesn't have an easy answer. After all, people connect with games for different reasons. For some players, Dandy's world represents years of memories with friends, countless hours spent exploring, and a community they've grown to care about. Walking away isn't necessarily an easy decision. At the same time, other players feel that remaining informed about what's happening behind the scenes is equally important, and that's why this conversation continues to grow. Every day, more people share their perspective. Some believe the game should remain completely separate from any controversy surrounding it. Their argument is simple. If the experience itself remains enjoyable, then players shouldn't feel pressured to stop supporting something they love. Others see things differently. They aren't necessarily criticizing the game itself. In fact, many of them still speak positively about Dandy's World whenever discussing its gameplay, characters, and creativity. Their concern is that they expected more communication during a period when so many questions were being asked. Neither perspective has disappeared, and that's exactly why the community remains so divided. What's perhaps most surprising is how quickly public perception can change. Communities don't transform overnight very often, but in this case, that's almost what it felt like. One moment, players were counting down the days until the next announcement. The next, they were debating topics that few people could have imagined, discussing just weeks earlier. It serves as a reminder that online communities are constantly evolving. They're shaped not only by the game themselves, but also by the people who create them and the conversations that surround them. That brings us back to one of the biggest question players who ask, what happens now? At this point, there are only a few possibilities. Maybe an official statement eventually arrives, providing answers and helping the community better understand the situation. If that happens, it will almost certainly become one of the most discussed moments in Dandy's World history. Or perhaps things continue exactly as they are now. New content release. Players continue sharing their opinions. Some return, while others decide to move on permanently. Communities have survived difficult periods before, and it's entirely possible that Dandy's World will do the same. There's also the possibility that entirely new developments emerge in the coming weeks, changing the conversation once right now. Nobody, and that's what makes this story so difficult to predict. No matter what happens next, one thing is absolutely certain: people are paying attention. Every announcement is being analyzed more closely than ever. Every public appearance, every community post, and every new piece of information quickly becomes part of a much larger discussion. That's simply the reality of where Dandy's World finds itself today. I've covered this game for a long time, and if you've watched this channel before, then you already know how much I've enjoyed talking about its mystery, secrets, lore, and memorable moments. That's why seeing the community in a situation like this feels so strange, because at its core, Dandy's World has always been about bringing people together, and yet, this may be the most divided the community has ever been. Still, I think it's important to remember speculation isn't the same as confirmation. In moments like these, it's easy for rumors to spread faster than fact. That's why it's important to remain patient, pay attention to verified information, and avoid jumping to conclusions before all the details become clear. Eventually, the full picture will emerge. It always does. Till then, every player will have to decide for themselves how they feel about the situation. Some have already made up their mind, others are, and honestly, both reactions are completely understandable. Maybe the community slowly returns to normal over time. Maybe this becomes a defining chapter in the history of Dandy's World. Or maybe we're still only seeing the beginning of a much larger story. Only time will tell. But if there's one thing I've learned from following this community, it's that Dandy's World always finds a way to surprise people when they least expect it. And right now, more people are watching than ever before to see what happens next. So now I want to hear from, are you still playing Dandy's World today? Have you decided to take a break? Or are you waiting for more information before making? Do you think the community will eventually move past all of this? Or do you believe players are still waiting? Let me know down in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious to see where everyone stands right now. And if you want to stay up to date on everything happening, hidden secrets and lore, to future updates and community discussions, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.